It feels like there's a new kind of political battle lines have been drawn historically. Yeah, left v right. Now it's the Liberal Uniparty versus traditional politicians. That's where we're heading. And I feel like the momentum is moving towards this. Like, I'm really interested in talking to you, and as I was with George, and as I am with the Reform people, because I feel like there's a demand for a hard shift. It's really funny. I saw this meme on Twitter, and it was like anarchists in the 80s, and it was like the Sex Pistols. Anarchists now, it was a traditional family together.
Yeah. Or in John Lydon's case, the Sex Pistols. No, he's actually quite sound. I mean, it is the real divide is between liberals and traditionalists, or sort of it's the social and the liberal are the two things. The liberal preoccupies self and doesn't think about duty and rootedness, and a sort of a proper conservative, Scrutonian conservative thinks about where you're from. So we always say the SDP's analysis of what our political opponents get wrong is that the Labour Party and the Liberals think about the country as a charity. They think it's some sort of charity or NGO. What is that? What are we can help next? They're not thinking about us. They're thinking about how we can appear good and what we can do good in the world.
So charity.
They think honestly, Peter. They think about the country as a charity. They view it as a charity, and the sort of libertarian zombie Thatcherites see it as a shop. But it's not a shop or a charity. It's a home. It's a home. When you start thinking about it, what would you like for your home, and you start having a more custodial idea about it, we protect it first. We don't denigrate it. I mean, our institutions are full of, progressives that denigrate British history all the time and see no good in it. You can't do that. If you bring a generation up in shame like that, you're in cultural trouble, real trouble. But no, I mean, we've done on things like, the border, the migrant crisis in the Channel, we've just done the work, I'm afraid, and a lot of the others haven't. And we are a smaller party, but the only way you solve it is by radically changing the incentives. And I would always say, and I'm on record as saying, the migrants in the Channel are making perfectly rational choice. Yes, very, very sensible choice, because in exchange for €5,000, they're almost certain to stay, and they get permanent access to the British social wage for them and eventually their families, because the family reunion. That is a phenomenal investment. You're an investor.
Do the same, possibly.
Yeah, of course. You'd be nuts not to. I mean, you'd be really crazy not to. That is the offer, €5,000, and you get, so the cost to the, I mean, it's difficult to get data out, but the Jan van der Beek study, which again is one of these major studies that, a Borderless Europe 2 years ago in Netherlands, they actually quantified the cost to the Dutch state of certain categories of migration. Certain categories were net beneficiaries to the state, North America, Japan, United States, Korea, and certain categories were very, very big costs. And so sub-Saharan African asylum migration is costing €630,000 lifetime, over €500,000 lifetime per person. So it's extraordinarily costly. But if you look at it from the other side of the tennis net, that's what the migrants getting, right? So they're getting a huge fiscal. I mean, we don't talk about it like this, but Harold Wilson used to talk about the social wage, the social dimension. The social wage is a very valuable thing. You get rights to housing, healthcare, schooling, and the rest in transport. So that's what they get, and they'd be nuts not to do it. If you want to change what's happening, you have to change the incentives. It's basic. And so no one that arrives unsolicited can stay, and they have to be removed straight away. We go for Ascension Island because we control it. I think the Rwanda scheme was a complete publicity stunt, a ridiculous scheme.
Where would you?
Ascension Island. Ascension Island is a British overseas territory in the middle of the Atlantic. We control it. It's ours. What you do is you build a detention facility there. Say you might build 5,000 spaces. They'll never be used.
Because they don't want to go there.
It would stop the flow overnight. It would. You understand. I mean,
because you're on a flight the next day.
Yeah, you haven't been kicked in the head by a horse. You understand that they would stop immediately. So you immediately go to Ascension for 2 years, whatever, and then you'll go elsewhere. You'll never ever stay. You stop it. And I've said, face to face to Richard Tice, we were discussing it. The reform policy is to sort of have pushbacks and it won't work. You can't do that.
Change the incentives.
Well, yes, and our system would work. You could say it's tough, but it would work, and it's right for the British taxpayer, and it would stop the deaths, and it would stop the drownings, and we'd get control of the border. You could do it if you want to do it. My problem with the ruling class is they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it
because they did a party.
because of the blinking dinner parties. So they're scared of what people think. So it's our job to do what's right and get a policy that will work. It is humane. It will serve. I mean, I've always argued, I'm not asking for much as a social democrat. I'm representing the majority opinion in this country. I want our border to be a secure border, right?
A democratic response.
Democratic response. It's under democratic control. So I want this, and I'm not asking for much, and we will get it. But it's the learning curve in SW1 is so slow. And I like a lot of the people in Reform, but Reform have to change their policy because pushbacks in the Channel won't survive. That policy will not survive the first capsized 80-person death. It'll be a disaster. You can't push back boats in the Channel in the winter. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. What you can do is say, come on.
But they tried it in Greece.
Oh, it's not practical.
Yeah, they tried it in Greece. I think even at one point they were shooting at the warning shots.
Some Greek Coast Guard might do that. Yeah, we didn't. No, you really did. So, and the Australians have a similar policy that we're proposing, which is that you arrive, you go off to PNG. And you go to prison. So that's it, and it stops it. And it's obvious that it would stop. So I'm afraid we've sorted out. You can't do that if you're in the ECHR. You have to repeal that and the HRA. But that's
why does ECHR prevent that?
Because taking an unsolicited arrival and deporting them to Ascension Island would breach a right that would be applied by the ECHR. So the legal architecture that's in place is not just the ECHR, it's our own Human Rights Act.
Okay.
So all of the legal architecture that's in place now, a lot of it has to be scrapped if you want a border.
But how does Rwanda differ under that ruling?
That's my point about Rwanda. That's why it was a publicity stunt, because the Tories, the classic Tory policy, they did all this stuff about Rwanda, but they left the legal architecture in place to appeal against their own policy. And that's what people did, of course. And so there were court decisions against the Rwanda policy.
There are very strong. So from the small C Conservatives outside the Conservative Party, and also the small L left. Did we say small L left? From the more traditional left wing, trad left, also calls to repeal the ECHR. And I think there's a growing voice.
Yeah, you can't. No, it's very simple. I mean, some things, a lot of things can be distilled down to very simple. You either have this legal architecture in place, which places your right of border control off, into international agreements, or you can get out of those things and you can get your border back. So it's the border or these deals. You can't have both. It really is a choice. If you leave that architecture in place, you can't have a secure border.
And what do you do about asylum?
Well, because
that gets abused as well.
It does get abused. I mean, I'm skeptical about large scale settlement by asylum because I think it's very, very difficult, particularly from certain places. And actually, in terms of cost, you can get 7 or 8 times as many people helped in the regions that they are coming from than here. That's just the cost. So remember, if you want to take a moral point, you could help 7 or 8 people for every one asylum seeker we take if you were doing it in the Middle East or Africa or wherever. So but at least get it under control. And you might have, for instance, a policy of having a limited number of asylum applicants that you accept a year, but they might be women and children, for instance, not fighting age males.